archetypal theory and the hero's journey cycle, the hero cycle through some various religious traditions. Before I get started, I just want to make everyone sure that this is not a comparison of the religions in any way. This is me studying the narrative of characters in the religions and the myths and doing an analysis of their cycle through the journey. So pretty much I'm going to get into why I did this. Growing up, I grew up Roman Catholic, a lot of rules, but as I grew up, I realized that I never really felt connected with it. I always felt this sort of disconnect, and I sort of lost my spiritual identity. And so when I had the opportunity to do something like this, an in-depth research, I wanted to go, like we all do as English majors, to the text, to the source, and I wanted to understand it on a more intellectual level. So, in this presentation, I'm taking an archetypal approach to the narratives of some of the major world religious traditions. So this includes the Bhagavad Gita. I'm studying the character of Arjuna. In the Bible, using the Old Testament and New, I'm doing Jesus and Moses. I'm using the Quran and the Dhammapada for Buddha and Muhammad. But the thing about those is, there's no one text that gives the narrative for Muhammad and the Buddha. It's mostly their teachings. There's snippets here and there that talk about it, but there's no one source. So I use those books to focus mainly on their teachings and what they say and get a sense of who they were through that. But there are versions of the stories out there that I did research on for the sake of this presentation. So what is a myth? Myths are stories we tell ourselves and what we tell other people to make sense of reality, make sense of the world around us. Joseph Campbell, who wrote the book Hero of a Thousand Faces, says, myths are clues to the spiritual potentialities of the human life. What that means is that's what we're capable as people of experiencing and understanding. That's the limits to which we are able to do that. So myths are not just dreams, but it's the dreams of the world. It's dreams that we can all relate to. And they don't give us a sense of, they don't answer what is the meaning of life. They give us more of a guide of how to experience life and how to embrace the full rapture that is life. So, what is archetypes? To understand archetype theory, you have to kind of understand what an archetype is. An archetype is a reoccurring story, character, plot, symbol that goes across many stories, across many cultures around the world. Some examples that are pretty common are the hero, the mentor, the everyman, the innocent, and then the villain. When you think of a hero, you think of bold, strong, noble, willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done, put the needs of others before himself. You think of a superhero. In literature, this is how we see a hero. This is Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And it's important to realize that while they're numbered, the steps are not chronological. It doesn't have to come in that order. Just at some point through the story, they will experience not all of these, but some of them. It's also important to realize that they don't necessarily have to have all of these, but they will hit on the majority of them. So, just a brief description for those of you who have never seen this. The call to adventure is the reason why they go. It's what happens, what's going on around them, a call, some sort of enlightenment, a dream, some reason that they get out of bed. They'll usually refuse the call the first time. Why me? Who am I? Why would I do this? Then they'll meet a mentor, usually someone who's older, has been through it, someone who's not willing to do it for them, but show them the way. And then crossing the threshold is a big one. That's where it goes into the underworld or the spirit world, or they transition from the ordinary world to the special world. And then there will usually be a death, a rebirth of some kind. Joseph Campbell has a quote that says that not all the deaths have to be a literal death. It could just be the death of something else. It just has to be a reborn, a new way of life, a new way of being, a new way of becoming. Then they'll come back around, and in the resurrection, they come back with something. So when they go down to the underworld, they come back with a book, an elixir, some type of treasure to bring back to restore order to the world around them. So, in the Bhagavad Gita is just a section of a larger epic tale called the Mahabharata. And in the Mahabharata, there's a king who's about to die, and these two families want to know who gets the throne. The Kaurava family says, we're the oldest, it should be ours, but he grants it to the Pandava family. Arjuna is one of the princes of the Pandava family. And his cycle goes like this, just in the Bhagavad Gita, not throughout the whole epic tale. So throughout this section of it, he has the call where he has to go to war. He's in the middle of the war when he realizes that this is what he has to do. His refusal is that's his relatives on the other side. He has to kill cousins, uncles, brothers, things like that, and he is reluctant to do that. And so that's when he meets his mentor. Krishna comes to him in the form of his charioteer. He comes before him, and throughout the Bhagavad Gita, it's a dialogue-driven story where he passes on lessons and tales to help him through it. His approach to getting there is Krishna teaches him about detachment. And what he says about detachment is that you have to meditate and you have to find yourself inward. And in chapter 6, verse 4, Krishna says, when you have freed yourself from the attachment to the results of work, from the desires of enjoyment of sense objects, you will ascend to the unitive state. So once you reach that level, you will become one with me, and you'll move on. And so, like Joseph Campbell's quote, Arjuna's death is not a literal death. He does not die, but rather the old version of him passes. And this passes when he asks Krishna to show him his cosmic vision. In chapter 11 of the Gita, he asks Krishna to show him his true form, the form in which he is all and all is in him. And after seeing this, he's full of awe and he's terrified. And he throws himself to the ground and he devotes himself to Krishna. This is the symbol of his death from before to now, his rebirth as devout to Krishna. His resurrection is his ascension of the gunas. And then, for those of you who don't know, the gunas, the three qualities of the phenomenal world. There's sattva, which binds us to happiness, rajas, which binds us to action, and tamas, which distorts our understanding and binds us to delusion. So, what Krishna says about ascending the gunas is, in chapter 14, verse 26 to 27, by serving me with steadfast love, a man or woman goes beyond the gunas. Such one is fit for union with Brahma. For I am the support of Brahma, the eternal, the unchanging, the deathless, everlasting Dharma, the source of all joy. So once you have ascended the gunas, you become one with Krishna, and he becomes one with you. There is a union of spirituality in that. And then his return is he agrees to go to war, and that's the end of the Gita. And then, like I said, there's the whole grand epic tale after that, but this is just this section of the story. Next we have Jesus and Buddha. I decided to kind of combine these two together because their stories are really similar. Their call to action is the world around them is not the way it should be. Jesus, it's from his birth, he is told by his mother and from Gabriel to Mary that he is to be the shepherd of all the people of Israel, that he will come and be the salvation of the world. Buddha, he realized the unreality in his reality, and that was his call to action. He went out and saw the world for what it was, because he was born into a life of luxury. And when he stepped out of that to see the outside world, he realized that it's not the way he thought it was, and that things weren't right, so they needed to change. So another commonality between them that addresses their call to action is that the world around them is influenced by a major religion. So in Buddha's world, Hinduism is a major influence on the world, and for Jesus, it's Judaism. Now, when they cross the threshold, Jesus goes to the desert for 40 days. Buddha goes to the wilderness to starve himself and then to eventually meditate. While they are out there, they are tested, which is another step in the cycle. They are tested. The devil or Satan comes to Jesus and tempts him 3 times. Buddha, while meditating, Mara, the evil version of the Buddhist or Hindu tradition, comes to him and tests him 3 times with 3 temptations. All 3 are denied, and they pass the test. And then there's the death. Jesus has the literal death. He has the crucifixion. He dies on the cross. Buddha has the death to himself, which is, again, going back to that not literal death, but the death of who he once was, the death of the wealthy, happy guy. And now he is reborn as the enlightened. And Jesus comes back to his resurrection in the resurrection. The return is that they both come back to be teachers of this enlightenment or this age of knowledge to spread to the world. And then there's Moses. Moses, the call to action is he comes across a burning bush, which has the voice of God, or Yahweh. It tells him that he has to go free the Israelites. In Exodus 3:10, it says, "Come, I shall send you to Pharaoh, and you are to bring my people out of Israel." So his call to action is that the people of Israel, the Jews in Israel, are slaves, the Israelites are slaves, and he has to get them now. He refuses the call. In Exodus 3:11, it says, "But who am I that should approach Pharaoh, and I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" This is the typical refusal of the belittling of yourself. And then his mentor isn't so much manifested, it's given to him through the power of his staff. Usually throughout the hero cycle, they receive some kind of divine weapon. And in this, Moses receives the staff, and the staff is used to show the Israelites that he is for real. So when he gets, his threshold is he has to convince them. He has to convince these Israelites. So he goes and he tries to tell them, "Hey, God sent me. I'm here to free you." And they're like, yeah, whatever. And he's like, "No, I really did. Yeah, whatever." So he goes to God and says, "I don't know what to do. I tried. They won't come." And so God tells him to use his staff. In Exodus 4, chapter 4, verse 30 to 31, Aaron repeated to them everything that the Lord had said to Moses. He performed the signs before the people, and they were convinced. When they heard the Lord had shown concern for the Israelites and had seen their misery, they bowed to the ground in worship. So that's his threshold. That's when he crosses over into that world. And then his test is, God tells him that he's going to make Pharaoh stubborn. He says, "I'm going to make sure that he's stubborn and he's not ready to give up, and you have to keep on pushing." And then there's the death. The death, and this is more of an hypothesis for Moses. Again, he does not literally die, but the shepherd in him dies. When the plagues begin, he is given the power, the embodiment of God's power, thus the hypothesis. He has the power to begin the plagues when the Pharaoh refuses to free the Israelites. Then there's the reward, which is at the end of the plagues, they're granted freedom. He's able to get them back. And then the road back is, once they get out, they have to travel 40 years throughout the desert. But when they finally get back to Egypt, Moses goes up the mountain, and there he receives the 10 Commandments from God, which is the elixir or the treasure that he brings back to end his journey. And then with Islam, there is Muhammad. Muhammad's call to action is the world he lives in is not good. The people aren't happy. There's lack of security. People are getting robbed. Women and daughters, mothers getting stolen and raped. And so he goes to a cave. And he goes to the cave, I think it says 3 days at a time, he'll come home for a day, go back to the cave for 3 days at a time, to pray and to find this spiritual enlightenment, to show him the way. And that's when the angel Gabriel comes to him as his mentor. He comes to him and says, I have the word of God, write it down. And his refusal, he tells him, I'm illiterate, I can't read, I can't write. So he dies, metaphorically, when Gabriel grabs him in a bear hug and squeezes him. And he says, squeezes the breath out of him, and it hurts him, and it scares him, but when he lets go, he realizes that he can't read and write. So his reward then is he's able to recite the word of God verbatim, written in the written form, and that he descends down the mountain and brings back the Quran, which is believed to be the exact word from God, from Gabriel. So now, you guys are probably sitting there like, okay, there's a lot of the same people, the same religion. Why should I care? What does this have to do with anything? Right, so what? Well, the benefits of looking at this through an archetypal style are that it shows honor to the specificity, and the differences of the world's religions. It opens up the stories to the universal elements of man. It does both allow access through the universal patterns of archetypes, but it also provides the cultural specificity of the cultures in which the religions arise. Now, there are devout people in their religions in the older generation that probably won't agree with me on this, but the modern generation is a more progressive thinking people. And in this progressive thinking, there has been a movement toward an inner spirituality, which is not the segregation or the refusal to, or the exile of diversity in religions, but it's more the acceptance of multiple religions and multiple paths to get to the unitive state. Because at the end goal of all of these is to get to that unitive state, which is to get to heaven, nirvana, enlightenment, the dharma, the way. All of these are one and the same. It's all the same path of getting there. So the archetypes allow each one to be unique and special to the culture that it's in, as well as provide this guidance through the use of myth to experience life. That's it.